أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum dear students. I hope all of you will be doing fine and enjoying good health, and all of your family members would be fine too. So in our previous lectures we were talking about the various aspects of public diplomacy, and I have already mentioned that once we are done with the general discussion about public diplomacy, we would start with having discussions about diplomatic discourses of China and the United States of America, and finally we would have a comparative analysis of both the diplomatic discourses of China and the United States of America. So, in our today's lecture, we would start with this very topic of Chinese diplomatic discourse, and um, it seems like it's quite a lengthy topic, and it would require us to have more than one lectures to cover this topic. So, in our today's lecture, I would like to start with the very basics of Chinese diplomatic discourse, and in the upcoming lectures, we would have further discussions about this topic. So, I would like you to have an overview of the contents of the topic which we will talk about in today's lecture and in the upcoming lectures. So, talking about the contents of the lecture, first of all, we will talk about what is diplomatic discourse or the discourse of diplomacy, and then we would also talk about the diplomatic discourses of the United States and China, as the US is the existing superpower, and China is the emerging power which seems to, or which might challenge the US hegemony in the years to come. So these two powers will be considered while having discussion about the diplomatic discourse. And in the next step, we will talk about one of the significant approaches, such as the critical discourse analysis that has been employed by most of the scholars all around the world. We will talk about the various aspects of the critical discourse analysis theory, and after that, now we would have a thorough analysis of the two main Chinese constructs of discourses that are the major Chinese constructs of diplomatic discourses are the development discourse and the security discourse. One by one, we will have a thorough discussion about both these constructs of Chinese discourses. And once we are done with this discussion about the constructs of Chinese discourses, and then we will explore the two ways of linguistic strategies that are employed to study the Chinese constructs of diplomacy. The first one is the on-record policies, on-record politeness strategies such as modesty, promises, expression of concern, and slogans. And the second one is the off-record politeness strategy such as metaphors, association, clues, intertextuality, aphorisms, and presuppositions. After having a thorough discussion about the linguistic strategies, we would finally talk about the three functions of diplomatic discourses. The first one is the identity function, the relational function, and the ideational functions. The identity function portrays China as a peace-loving nation in order to obtain trust from the global community. And as far as the relational function is concerned, it includes three types of relations concerning China, which leads to legitimacy in formulating foreign policy. And the ideational function reproduces the harmonious world. That is one of the dominant ideologies of Chinese society, to create stability for the world so that China can sustain its continuous growth. So these are the various aspects of the Chinese diplomatic discourse, which will be covered in our discussions. And we will have thorough analysis of all these various aspects of this topic. Okay, before talking about the various aspects of Chinese diplomatic discourse, I would like to start with the brief background of the diplomatic discourse. So it is widely recognized that the 21st century marks the rise of Asia as the world's predominant strategic and economic center of power and influence. Many scholars from all around the world have presented their ideas about the emerging significance of Asia as the center of, as the epicenter of the world politics for power and influence. I would like to mention one of the key thinkers you might have heard about before. He is known as a great geostrategist around the world. I'm talking about Mahan. He speaks of the emerging significance of Asia in the world geopolitics, particularly the emerging significance of the Indian Ocean waters. He believes the battleground of the 21st century will be fought over these waters because of its emerging, because of its rising importance in the international politics. So, as the American century gives way to Asian century, the rise of China has raised inevitable concerns in the United States. While the American government has proclaimed the 21st century as the Pacific Century, a region bounded by Asia and the US, it has simultaneously pursued a policy of containment against China. Fear over growing Chinese influence started as early as 1992 in the American policy circles, when presidential candidate Bill Clinton spoke of the China threat, and it has been presented as a public enemy or a common enemy of the global world. Such stigmatization is one phenomenon of international politics in which one country assigns negative qualities to another. So we can see this very thing in the bilateral relationship between India and Pakistan too, that India always try to portray a negative image of Pakistan in the international community as a state sponsor country, or as a country sponsoring state terrorism. So this is very common phenomena, which is which is found in the international politics or among the states of the relation. So in this case, the discourse around the China threat initiated by the United States portrayed China as public enemy or common enemy of the global world. Clearly, the international arena is a space of meaning where the global superpowers exert their influence through language. So, language has been predominantly used by different states of the world to exert their influence. Yet, despite this power of language to assign positive and negative labels, the traditional view of language held by many in the field of international relations has tended to be grounded in empiricism, where language is understood to be a neutral medium of communication. So, in the international sphere, in the international relations, the language has been embedded with both positive and negative constructs to achieve states' objective or states' national interest. It is not just a neutral, it is not just only considered a neutral medium of communication. So consequently, the political role and status of language have been frequently overlooked. However, recent interest in the linguistic term has affected some change in this view. So language is no longer seen as neutral, rather it is viewed in terms of speech acts which simultaneously construct the sense of self and the other. And China is well aware that a peaceful political climate is essential to its continued economic growth, and therefore it is virtually thinkable that China would initiate an armed conflict. So, keeping this factor in mind, Chinese policymakers and leadership, they are quite aware of this reality, and they, for many years, they presented China. They continue with the policy of being a low-profile country, even though their economic might and military modernization can be matched with the existing superpower. Okay, now we will talk about, after having a brief overview of the background of the usage of the diplomatic discourse or the use of language as a means of political construct in the international relations. We would now like to talk about the objectives which are significant to explore the various aspects of this diplomatic discourse study. There are three objectives. There are three objectives to the study. The first one analyzes the process of discourse construction used by China in its relation with other countries. So the first one of the key objective is to investigate that how a nation construct its discourse while establishing its or while continuing its relationship with other countries of the world. And second objective is to investigate the linguistic strategies for constructing meaning in the diplomatic discourse of President Xi Jinping. So the linguistic strategies which we just have mentioned about in the introductory speech of this very topic. These on-record politeness strategy and off-record politeness strategies, they both are utilized to construct the meaning of the diplomatic discourse made by the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And finally, the key, the final objective would be to analyze the role of diplomatic discourse in the Chinese president's speeches. So, at the last, we would look at the role played by diplomatic discourse in the Chinese president's speeches, that it would be used to determine how far the diplomatic discourse of China presented through the speeches of the President Xi Jinping has been successful. So these three objectives would be kept in mind while having discussion about the various aspects of Chinese diplomatic discourse. Okay, now we will talk about one of the most significant approaches to study about the diplomatic discourses of different countries, that is the critical discourse analysis strategy or technique. It has been developed by Norman Fairclough and Kuhn Wendijk. This theory focuses on the study of linguistic structures that are used in discourse to achieve social understanding. It also seeks to uncover the means by which ideas not explicitly stated are nonetheless conveyed through discourse. So through this critical discourse analysis, an effort is made to, or this theory helps to uncover the tools, the ways by which ideas which are not clearly stated by the leadership conveyed through language, conveyed through discourse. So this theory is of immense significance to find out the hidden meaning associated with the statements made by the leadership of different countries. The assumption is that language is not just an arrangement of words, but rather the words are imbued with intentions, attitudes and beliefs of a person who uses them. So we can take the example of China's like ideology, like China has used different terminologies to portray its intentions to the international society. The first few years back, in China, with its rising economic power and military modernization, they use the terminology of peaceful rise. And in order, when Chinese policymakers got to know that perhaps the word rise is imbued with or is associated with aggression, so they made some adjustment with that terminology, and they came up with the idea of peaceful development rather than the peaceful rise. So the point here is to make that words are associated with meanings and attitudes and intentions. So states leaderships, they are very careful to, they always keep this factor in mind while coming up with certain terminologies. Now we will talk about the three-dimensional framework to analyze discourse given by Fairclough. So the first one is the text whereby the component elements are analyzed, and the second dimensional framework given by Fairclough is the discursive practice. It is where the relationship between the process of producing the text and the communicational context is examined. And finally, the sociocultural practice. It is the in this dimensional framework. The analysis focus on the ways in which the ideology or mindset communicated through the text have been influenced by socio-cultural factors and how the text contributes to the construction of meaning. So this three-dimensional analysis makes visible the role of discourse in and its relationship to the society. De Dewey, on the other hand, claims that a society's powerful elites maintain their superior status and exercise control over others through the construction of discourses embedded with certain ideologies and mindset intended to protect their interest. According to him, ideology may also be communicated by means of numerous linguistic strategies which include word choice, interpretation, and rhetorical strategies, for instance, metaphors and hyperbole. So these strategies are essential to embedding ideologies in language. Critical discourse analysis therefore offers new perspectives in our understanding of society, culture, and politics. So critical discourse analysis is one of the most significant strategy which is employed by different scholars from the world to study about the diplomatic practices of various countries, and this critical this critical discourse analysis technique is quite effective when it comes to exploring the Chinese diplomatic discourse. So in the next part of our discussion, which we will have in the next lecture, we will point out the critical discourse analysis while exploring the various aspects of the Chinese diplomatic discourse. And that's all for today's discussion, and in the next lecture we will continue with the Chinese construct of diplomatic discourse, that is the development discourse and security discourse. And if you have any queries, you are most welcome to raise your question in our WhatsApp group, and I will be quite happy to address your queries. So and I would also like share some reading material with you about this very topic, so that you can have a comprehensive analysis of this discussion topic. So until then, wish you good luck and stay safe and healthy. See you for next lecture, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.